Good evening, everybody. My name is Donnie Cho, and I am the host of this show, Donnie Cho Says Stuff. And tonight we have a very special episode prepared for you folks at home listening and watching. Thank you for joining. Tonight I have my esteemed colleague coming onto the show to discuss the topic of one, Georgio Tsoukalos. And to commemorate the show, I've tried to match my hair as much like Georgio Tsoukalos as I can. Because this is where I get to fanboy out for in my opinion, the most beautiful man in all of the Fortean topics, Georgio Tsoukalos. And tonight I will bring on my buddy here, Jason, very shortly, to discuss and debate the topic of ancient aliens and the Annunaki narrative. And we will have a good discussion. So here he comes, folks. Hey.
What do you mean by the topic of ancient aliens? Is Georgio not going to be here?
Why would you think Georgio was going to be here?
Well, it literally says Jason versus Giorgio. I thought it was rather last minute.
No,
I thought you would have really given me, but you're telling me Georgio Tsoukalos isn't going to be here?
I thought that, well, it was, it was supposed to be like all metaphorical and shit.
Metaphorical? Dude, I got things to do. My daughter's getting married in like 2 weeks. I've been stuffing napkins and silverware and we're printing label. Georgio Tsoukalos isn't going to be here.
No, how do you think I know Georgio Tsoukalos? You think my show's big enough to get that motherfucker on here?
Well, first of all, I didn't think you did. That's why when I saw it and you're like, hey, you want to come on and talk? You sent me a thumbnail. I thought, well, maybe you had, I don't know, maybe you knew somebody or he was
metaphorical, man. We're supposed to discuss. You're supposed to debate the topic of ancient aliens, and I'm the stand-in for Georgio. That's why I'm making my hair this way. So I will represent. I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here. I'm gonna try to argue for the topic of the Anunnaki narrative and ancient aliens, ancient astronaut theory. Do you like my hair, by the way?
I do like your hair. I kind of like it that way in general, but I feel lied to.
Dude, remember that one episode we did, Jason versus aliens? I mean, not Jason versus aliens, Jason versus dinosaurs.
Yes.
Right? The title was just straight up Jason versus dinosaurs.
But that is clearly a metaphor because I can't just
beat up a dinosaur.
Yeah, trust me, if I could, I wouldn't be doing this show.
I'm pretty sure you could beat the shit out of a pre-compsognathus. Those little ones. I'm pretty sure you could just punt that motherfucker across the room.
Yes, I could. I'm sorry, what kind of dinosaur again?
What is that? What it's called? Pre-compsognathus or whatever. Those little ones. Remember the ones? Okay, John Hammond in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, huh?
Right. He doesn't get jacked in the movies, but in the books he gets jacked by the littlest shitty ones. But a whole bunch.
Which, by the way, absolutely should have happened in the movie.
Yeah,
that man was a menace. But continue.
Yeah, that actor would have been down for that. I could see you beating the shit out of one of those.
Oh yeah,
just grab it by its tail.
You can beat the crap out of an actual velociraptor. They're like goose sized. They're really small. They're not as big. Yeah, they're not really. But whatever. Okay, you know what? I'm here. I got all dressed up. Actually, I didn't. I'm still wearing the clothes I was using to put everything together. But that's why I'm all shaggy. I'm actually letting everything grow out so I can have my hair and beard professionally cut for the wedding next week. And but I guess I'm here. I've been doing stuff all day. I guess I should probably do a break. So okay, I'll do the show. I'll do the show. You didn't do your hair for it. I feel I did
get all dolled up for it, man.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to be rude.
So yeah, we're here to just to commemorate Georgio Tsoukalos by matching his hair. That's why I did my hair this way. So Jason, why didn't you do your hair this way? Oh yeah, I forgot. Awkward.
I'm too sexy to do that.
Awkward. Maybe you could push your beard out. Yeah.
There we go.
Maybe do a handstand so your beard's like facing up.
Upside
down, look like Giorgio's hair.
All I know is in a couple of years he's going to go full Centauri from Babylon 5, and it'll be like out here.
So, I want to just introduce for folks at home. You all know who he is, Georgio Tsoukalos. He is well. I've been starting this little mini series of icons in the Fortean topic in the Fortean world. This is going to be my second episode where I commemorate an icon in the paranormal world. And I think the greatest name in all of ufology and UFO research, the whole UFO and alien side of it, it's not Lou Elizondo. It's not Bob Lazar. Get those fucking scrubs out of here. No, it's Giorgio. He's the most beautiful man. He's got the most magnificent hair. Now, for those of you who don't know, I've been getting struck for showing videos because they're assholes. But I realized something. I can't be copyright struck if I show my own show. So I am going to show you a brief clip of the first icons of the paranormal I did with Brandy. And you know how Giorgio's like the most beautiful man in ufology? With Brandy, we did a show where we commemorated the most beautiful man in the whole paranormal side, and that's Zachary Baggins. I just want to show a brief clip. Have you seen this episode?
I have. It's actually been a while. I remember when you did it, but yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I get to show a video again and not have to worry about getting my ass copyright struck because they're a bunch of assholes.
I don't know if you actually get struck for this. I'm gonna laugh.
Oh yeah. He's the number one guy, right? He's the only guy in the entire paranormal community that's the actual household name. Like people who aren't even into the paranormal still know who he is, right? If you got
let me tell you something. Now, my children, when they were younger, they would watch that show quite a bit. Now, Ghost
the
Adventures, they'd
beautiful
watch
man.
it. You know what they call that show? They call it the Dude Bro Show because all you heard was like dude and bro. That's all you heard the whole entire show.
He's like one of us, Brandy. Don't you ever say dude or bro? I say dude and bro all the time. He's like one of us. Beautiful man. I wanted people to I just wanted to remind people. Hold on. I want to show the brief bit where we get to see him with his shirt off. Would you like to see Zach Baggins with his shirt off, Jason?
Not particularly, but I mean, if it floats your boat.
Anyway, no. Anyway. Too bad there are no pictures of Giorgio with his shirt off. You know, we can't have it all.
I know some things. Let's just say I don't think it would go off as well.
Hey, how do I how do I fix this so that it's like back to where I had it before? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Now my screen's all fucked up. Oh no. Okay, I got it. Okay. All right. So
put all this paper somewhere.
So we're gathered here tonight, folks, to discuss the Ancient Alien series. Now, this show came on like when? Early 2000s, I believe.
Oh, I've lost track. It's been a while though. It's been around for a good long time.
Yeah, I remember, it came onto History Channel, right? Prior to this, History Channel was just kind of lame and boring. They just showed, it was mostly like World War II documentaries.
You mean it was actually educational?
And all that boring ass history shit, but then Ancient Aliens comes on, and you're like, "Oh, what the fuck?" And that shit blew my mind open, Jason McLean. It blew my mind. I was open to a whole new world of possibilities. It appeared. Oh, it aired in 2009, and you know what? From 2009 on, the world got to understand what real history is about. That's why History Channel started changing all of their programming to Ancient Aliens. Because finally they engage the real shit.
Is that what they're doing?
The real origin of our civilizations and our species, the Annunaki.
Is that what they're doing?
So, Jason, walk me through your experience the first time, I don't know, you saw Ancient Aliens, and what were your initial thoughts and impressions on the show and of our friend here, Giorgio?
Well, Giorgio is the Don Ho of the Ancient Aliens world.
Don Ho or Don Cho?
Wait, whoever Mike Tyson's it was Don Ho, right?
No, Don King.
Don King.
Don Ho was that Hawaiian dude.
Yeah, Don Ho was the Hawaiian dude. Yeah. Yeah, he was the Don King. Sorry. Yeah, he's the Don King of the whole thing. I remember seeing it the first time. Again, it was a good show. It's entertaining. I've always been a fan of I just forgot his name. Dagnabbit. David Hatcher Childress. So it was good to see him, right? But and again, the thing about Ancient Aliens is that they play very fast and loose with a lot of material.
What? So I saw that episode. I was mind blown. Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let me tell you the first. Okay, with the first episode, they brought. Well, okay, let's just rewind it back a bit. So largely, that first episode, it was really presented as like a documentary miniseries.
Yeah,
which it was largely.
It wasn't really a whole. It wasn't really an entire season. It was just like a little miniseries that they picked up because it was so successful.
Yeah. And it was largely based off the writings and the materials off of this book.
Yep.
Chariots of the Gods. Eric von Daniken. Which, for you guys are probably mostly familiar, posits that humanity was seeded by an extraterrestrial race that was highly advanced, known as the Annunaki, who were referenced in the Sumerian texts. And their initial reason for creating us as a species was to use us as labor, as a slave race, to harvest our genetic material and to use us to help them mine gold, because gold is a precious commodity throughout the galaxy. So the Anunnaki, they seeded this planet, they infused their genetic materials and created us. And I was like, what? And my hair was like this. And then they started presenting all this proof. And I'm like, they showed us fucking airplanes from like ancient Mayans and shit. And I'm like, what? They knew about airplanes and shit? Holy shit. How did they know, Jason? How did they know? Didn't have travelers?
Well, and that's actually a really great place to start, because even like the first time I went on Coast to Coast, I talked about that. Because again, I'm open to the idea that particularly the Nephilim and others have survived by creating other materials, flying. And actually I was open to the idea that they were flying around in these things. But the problem is this goes back to the whole playing fast and loose with the evidence, right? The one thing that I said in my interview with Coast to Coast when they asked me about those, I said, whatever they are, the artists were close enough to touch them. Because again, I'm an artist. I know what there were aspects to the design, and the truth is they were, because those are actually fish. They're the sucker fish that you see in tanks.
These are fish?
Well, so you notice those are models that they've built.
Yeah.
And if you look at the originals, they've removed quite a bit of detail to make them fly. And yes, they did change the aerodynamics of the wings so that they would have lift, because the actual models are like teeny tiny. They're very, very small. The little gold ingots. And if you look and you notice, anytime they show you the photographs of these quote unquote craft, right? These Delta Wing craft.
Yeah.
Essentially the photograph is a broader shot, and then they just zoom in on the photograph of them, so they never really get more clear. They're not actually going in closer on the craft themselves, because then you start noticing, it's actually, there's a face on the thing. Again, I did an entire episode on both serial papers and questions and everything, where I show these are just those sucker mouth catfish, right? They live like the Quimbaya aircraft, as they're called. We have gold out of that, these little gold figurines from that entire culture, right? And this river that runs through the area, they have these very, very large suckerfish. Those suckerfish will get big if you give them a chance, like 18 inches to 2 feet. If they get a chance, they're just armored catfish. So when you actually look at them side by side and you look at the actual figurines up close, and not the way they're sort of faded and then they just move in closer on the actual picture and not the actual object, it's to sort of disguise what's going on. And you notice they never actually show you other artifacts, right?
Right.
They never show you the other artifacts from that culture. So you'd be like, oh, well, hey, hold on.
Yeah, but they're talking about this shit having a fuselage. I'm like, oh shit, yo, catfish got fuselages? Damn.
Well, only if you interpret it that way. That's the problem. If you actually were to put this up against the real artifacts, they're clearly not the same thing. They've taken liberties so that they would fly. That's one of the big myths is, oh, well, it's an exact replica. No, it's not. You're leaving all kinds of things off. You are omitting an awful lot of information, and you are deliberately shaping a wing shape so that it will fly. They've got people have built replicas of Snoopy flying his doghouse as the Red Baron, and they can get that to fly. You can make anything fly if you take the right liberties, right? But that's the problem, is that a lot of the things that they present are, if not, there's some things are, they use a lot of ambiguity in order to present their evidence without actually presenting real evidence, right?
Yeah, let me just read what Uncut says. Cheers, buds. Georgio is a good guy. He is a good guy and a beautiful guy. But I don't agree with all these things being for sure something having to do with aliens. Some places make me wonder, though. Puma Punku. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Puma Punku.
Yo, how do you explain this, man? Look at how straight those cuts are, and they're perfect angles. The only way you could get a cut like that, laser beams.
Because rock carving has never existed.
And you know who got laser beams? Yeah, rock carving with laser beams.
Again, so this is, I famously have said if there's any group that's really terrible at determining how things were done in the past, it's archaeologists.
Yeah.
But this is the same problem, right? Where you have people who don't actually have experience with certain technologies, and they just say, well, I can't do this today with my level of technology, and I can't think of another way to do it. Therefore, it has to be some other thing. Here's the problem. We know how a lot of these things were done because we can replicate them. Now, again, in the Americas, there's not a lot of written information on things like this. I actually do think Puma Punku is probably pre-flood, to be honest. Right? I again can't say that for certain, but I think there's enough evidence to say that really should be on the table. But the simple fact of the matter is, you can sand, we think of these things being built in 5 or 10 years, right? We build buildings, it takes 5-10 years to build these really big. A lot of these structures, pretty megalithic structures in the past, could take decades, entire lifespans to make, right? There are whole cathedrals. They'll say, oh, this was built in this year. Well, that was the year the primary structure was completed. Yeah, but it took 500 years to build some of these cathedrals, right? It's really amazing what you can do when you have an entire workforce spending their entire lives doing something, right? And a lot of stuff comes down to we really, really have this hubris about modern technology that says, if we can't do this, nobody else can. It's like, well, I'm sorry, you haven't really had to think about this because you live in a world with cranes and drills. I'm sorry, but you've grown up at an entirely different level of technology. You've never had to think about this. There's all kinds of technologies that have gone out of fashion because we don't use them. And so it's incomprehensible to you that a human being could do a thing. Humans, if anything, we've gotten a little less smart.
Like this kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, again, if we assume that was made in a day, yeah, you would need a machine for that. But if that took a year to carve or 6 months to carve, yeah, I mean, that's very, very doable. Again, some of these structures probably take centuries to build. Again, that doesn't mean Pumapunku isn't high strangeness. I'm telling you, I think it's probably pre-flood because of the conditions in which it was found. But the simple fact of the matter is, it's not really evidence of aliens. So much of the ancient alien argument is humans couldn't do a thing, therefore must be aliens. That's the entire premise of the show.
Must be aliens.
Must be aliens.
Yeah. Because, they got all that dope technology, even though, if you think about it, doesn't fully make sense that aliens will be flying around in planes that rely on basic aerodynamic principles if they've got anti-gravity having fucking UFOs.
Yes. Well, and also here's the thing, right? Let me ask one question. Right. I think Tex and I even asked this when we talked about it on the show a while back. There are hundreds and hundreds of these gold figurines from Quimbaya, right? From the Quimbaya region. Why is it less than a handful are of the chariots of the gods? All of them are easily recognizable as humans or other aspects of local fauna, right? Birds, fish, insects, other mammals, frogs. Like, you can see them. They're obvious as to what they are, right? So we have a handful of these out of the hundreds of figurines. They're only making a handful of their gods' chariots. Does that make any sense to you at all? Why wouldn't it be more likely that they are fish? They're just, what they do is they'll say, no, archaeologists don't know what this is supposed to symbolize. They could be fish, or they could be birds, or they could be insects. Like, whoa. No. You know better than what you're doing. They are taking the idea of what all of the figurines are and then allocating them just to this very, very small subset.
Yeah.
But wouldn't a more reasonable explanation be the reason there's only a handful of these is these were not important animals or fish, and they were still making them, that they would just be representations of animals and fish from the region, like all the others were. It's just that the reason there's a handful of them is they weren't all that important.
All right.
If it's the chariots of the gods, you'd think there'd be a few more. You think they'd have much larger structures dedicated to these things. And yet, they don't. So, again, there's a lot of obfuscation with this stuff.
All right.
And by the way, the Nazca, I saw someone ask about the Nazca lines, right? Here's the thing.
Well, let me just read it real quick. Yeah. Nazca lines could be made for aliens, could be for the gods, could be both.
This is also one of those ideas that, again, we assume that if you make something big that can only really truly be observed in the sky, then it must be for something up in the sky. But you, being a Buddhist, right? Thank you for going back to Buddhism and leaving Christianity alone. It's, as well as I do, that there are practices of meditation where you walk in labyrinths, right? They aren't full on, walls and everything. They're basically paths on the ground, and you're supposed to walk them, right? To meditate, to contemplate your relationship with the universe and things like that. We only assume that if you build a thing that can be seen from the sky, that must mean it's for the sky. It could be that it is a path that you were to walk as a form of meditation, as a religious practice. We don't have any writing from the culture that actually built the things, right? And we know how they were made. And people are like, well, how could they have made them? They didn't have anyone to look down. It's called a grid, people. All right. As an artist, one of the things we're taught is that if you want to do a good portrait of someone, an easy way of doing it is you draw a grid and then you do that, right? You draw within the grid. You use the grid to help you line everything up. We have found the grid that they use to make these structures. They literally they just, because again, Nazca doesn't have a lot of actual erosion, so the grid line that they put in the ground to make these things is still visible. It's not that it's not easy to do, but it's not really that complicated either. It just takes the dedication to do it. Again, the problem with with the entire premise of what they present as evidence in Ancient Aliens and a lot of this stuff is humanity must have been stupid because it was a long time ago, because we're smart now, they're stupid then. It must be somebody else who's smart to figure these things out. Right?
What about, Uncut Savage says there's also old writings like a Roman general describing flying shields, famous paintings with UFOs in them. I do believe they point that out in the show. Oh, and my favorite, Bible descriptions of wheels in the sky. I think Uncut is referring to this little incident, this little gem in the Bible. That's right, folks. There's aliens in the Bible. Did you want to tell them real briefly about the wheel? Whose wheel was it again? Was it Ezekiel's wheel?
Ezekiel.
Yeah.
So I actually have an entire episode on that on, I forget which one of my channels I have it on. May have been Syrup Papers. But actually, let's start with the Romans.
Okay.
Yes, the Romans did, or there is a Roman text that describes something of this event where they talk about this shining shield. Here's the problem. Yeah, no one is saying that there aren't. My entire premise is that there are miraculous things that occur all throughout human history. Angels, demons, all these things are real. We should not be surprised when they show up, right? The problem is the ancient alien hypothesis is that all encounters of the supernatural in antiquity was simply encounters with alien extraterrestrial beings that they did not understand. That is simply the premise, right? It is working from an assumed paradigm, and then just saying, well, because they saw that, that must then therefore mean that they saw aliens, right? Again, I've always famously said, if you were to sit me and Georgio down, which I thought you were going to do, but clearly you lied.
Because I knew what would have happened if you guys were in the same room. You would have just started hitting him. Jason's a hitter, guys. He hits people. Why you gotta be doing that, Jason? Don't be like that.
Aren't you the one who loves the WWE?
Yeah, but
Just saying, you should appreciate a good SmackDown. Anyway, if you were to sit us at a table, we would agree on the following sentence. I would say false, but the gods and supernatural beings of the ancient world and the UFO knots of today, again, excluding government, experiments, stuff like that, but the truly unique material. If you were to put us at, I would agree that the UFO knots, the truly exotic UFO knots, are the same as the creatures and beings described in antiquity. The difference would be, he would say they were always UFO knots. I would say, no, I think we got it right the first time, that these are supernatural beings that we're interacting with. And we'll get into more detail as to why later on. So yeah, I've got no problem with there being encounters with these things in the past. The problem is that it is presented as, well, this is evidence that they're aliens. There's no evidence that these were extraterrestrials that they encountered, only that they encountered this thing. That's all. That's the only story. What was the second thing before we get to Ezekiel's will? There was another aspect. Paintings. So yeah, that's another one of these things where if you look, they never actually get close into what the image is in the UFO paintings from the medieval period. You'll notice it's always a faraway photograph that they just zoom in closer to the photograph. They don't actually zoom in closer to the actual object they're describing, right? Because if you do, you realize very quickly they're not UFOs at all. This is a common theme, and a lot of, again, this is one of those things we see with where there are known art forms The artists wrote about them, contemporaries wrote about them. These were common conceits, and so the people are looking at the iconography. They know what it is. It's being experimented with. There is a ton of material where you have essentially an angel, and it's the Annunciation, right? And essentially, it's the glory of God. You usually have cherubs or angels, and usually it's the putti, so it's just the head, right? It's not even the full little angel; it's just the head. And the lines that are going out are the glory, and they are announcing Christ to, usually it's the shepherd or Mary, right? But it's a halo. Essentially, that's all it is. It's simply it's a glory cloud with radiation, light radiating out. But what they do is they make certain you never get close enough to see that those are faces that are of angels that are lining this glory cloud, right? Artists have represented this 100 different ways. And they pick some where they have them, like there's one version where it's the glory cloud is like announcing Jesus to the shepherds. Well, the shepherds are far away, right? That's their favorite one. They have like the Madonna John, they have that in the back. The people looking at this knew what it was. They understood what it was. The artists wrote about it. But what they do is that what the ancient astronaut theoreticians will do is they'll look at them and say, well, we think it could be this. Okay, well, why do you think it could be this? Why do you think that they are depicting this? Because that's what they want it to be. There's no evidence for it. There's no writings of it. It's just, well, we think it could look like this. So to make certain that you see what we want you to see, we're going to make certain you don't actually get a clear picture of the image itself, right? We see the same thing it's always the crucifixion. Notice it's always the crucifixion, right? You have what look like figures writing they look like craft, right? In the left hand and right hand side of the crucifixion, and they look like people, and they always show the ones where it looks like people driving in like ships or whatever, right? Well, that's what it looks like to us. What we tend to forget is, what they never tell you deliberately is that there is this, in medieval writing, they used to do plays. They used to do passion plays, things like this. Because the sun is darkened during the event, all of these celestial hosts play roles. The sun and the moon are personified in these plays. Well, that's what that's depicting. It's supposed to be the sun and the moon. And if you look at other renditions of the crucifixion, it's clear it's the sun and the moon. They have faces on them. But some artists depict them as actually like actors playing the role. That's what we're seeing.
Hold on one second, Jason, real quick. Is that you, Elf? Oh, hey, dude. I never banned you, guy. I don't even know how to ban people. There was one dude I banned. Do you remember that Smoky Mountain Wanderer guy? I banned his ass. Yeah, that was fun. No, he was like the only dude I ever banned. Never banned you, dude. Oh, man. Yeah. Can I ban? I don't even. How do I ban people again? I don't even know. Oh, it's those three dots.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's those three dots. Never mind. Okay. No, never banned you, dude. Yeah, I only banned one dude. And that was real satisfying. I almost want to unban that guy just so I could ban him again. That guy's such a dick. What a fucking retard that guy is.
That is actually fun. Anyway, that's the thing. A lot of this goes back to, they take artwork that is unique to a culture and to a time and to a mentality that we don't have. And they say, well, because we would do this differently, they must have done something different. Like then they must have the same mentality. These were people who considered beavers fish, right? And that's not because they were stupid. It's because they had a different conception of what things meant. Their categories were different. They were trying to do different things.
But they thought beavers were fish? Damn.
Well, they didn't think they were fish. They knew they weren't fish. They knew they were mammals, but they were considered fish for like the purposes of
for the sake of okay, I get it.
Right. Again, the way they categorize things were just different. It had to be useful to them. We tend to forget that our way of thinking is really, really modern, and it's very specific to our culture. And the problem is we try to look at these other cultures through our lenses. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Wait,
how'd you explain this though, Jason? Wait a minute. But what about this shit? This motherfucker's in a fucking rocket ship. Look at him manning the controls. This guy looks like he's like piloting a TIE fighter right now.
Can we come
Some
back to that?
Mayan
Because I want to
Yeah.
finish up the.
Okay.
This is actually connect. Actually, that's very much connected to Ezekiel's wheel. Right?
Ezekiel's. Oh yeah, go back to Ezekiel's wheel.
Because this is very much connected. I've done several videos on this one. Here's the problem. That's not what's described at all. What they
In
do
Ezekiel's wheel?
and yeah, what is talked about is Ezekiel chapter 1. Virtually the entire freaking chapter is dedicated to describing what Ezekiel's actually seeing, right? They take two sentences and say, well, this is what he saw. And that's why it's the wheel. It wasn't the wheel. The wheels, plural, 4, are flanked by the angels, which are fully described. What is being described, again, you can go see the episodes on my channels. There was a belief, again, we have to remember, this is the Bronze Age. A lot of the Old Testament prophets, what they are doing is they are throwing shade. And again, I do think this is a true vision from God. God is showing himself in a way that has meaning to throw shade at the religious beliefs of the cultures surrounding Israel. There was a belief from the Sumerians, Mesopotamians, that their chief deities, because again, those were two different, they were kind of the same, but they were different, sat on these thrones that had wheels to show that they could go everywhere and look at different places. The wheel within a wheel is an actual description of a level of technology. It was like the highest level of chariot wheel, right, that they had at the time. This is known. We have statues of this. We have images of this. We have conversations in both Ugaritic and Mesopotamian, Sumerian, where they are discussing the chariot wheel within a wheel. It is just a chariot wheel. That's the entire point. God is presenting himself as the highest of highs. That's the entire point, because it's not a UFO that's being described. It is God sitting enthroned on his throne above the earth, above the firmament of the earth. There are wheels, and then you have the cherubim, seraphim, and Isaiah that are his throne guardians. To get the pictures that you have, right, that you showed, you have to omit well over 80% of the description in the chapter. And they always seem to omit the fact that Ezekiel's the only one who sees the vision, the sound, the wind. Everybody else sees that. They don't see the image. They don't see the vision that Ezekiel sees. Well, again, that's not what happens with UFO encounters. Everyone sees the same thing. So yeah, again, it goes back to omitting information so that you only are allowed to see what they present to you. They never give you the other option. They never give you the full context. Going back to I want to say it's Mayan, but it may be Aztec image that you put up, right?
This guy?
Yeah. So you notice they only show you the up close version of that. They never show you the full sarcophagus.
Yeah.
Because it's a tree. This, again, these cultures have art. They have histories. They have mythologies. You can't just strip all that away and impose an ideology on top of it because it's convenient for your beliefs.
Oh, you mean like what woke people do with like classic movies and stories?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. It's the same thing. We know what this is. This is, I forget the name of the leader, but in his death, he is supposed to ascend this sort of world tree, right? That would be the word that we would use. It would be like the world tree. The problem is we extract the art out of a cultural period, out of a cultural context, out of their ways of thinking, out of their mythologies, and then just repurpose it for our own, for their own ends. You and I have had plenty of conversations about this with the tulpa, right?
Right.
It comes out of Zen Buddhism, but is how it's used in Western Fortean research, resembling it all, how it is actually represented in Zen Buddhism.
Right. Well,
I was opening up for you to actually.
It was Tibetan Buddhism, actually.
I'm sorry, Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah,
yeah, because like in the original like text, it's really describing more like astral projection than anything, instead of this like spiritual golem that your mind manifests or whatever.
Well, again, the Western version, it's like a bunch of people randomly thinking about a thing make the thing occur, right?
Yeah.
Or happen. Yeah. It's not at all, again, to your point, it's not at all what that word actually means.
Mm-hmm.
But what John Keel did is he took a concept and said, well, I'm going to use the word, I'm going to ascribe it to my own concept that has maybe something tangentially connected to this idea, and then just claim it for my own. And then therefore that becomes evidence of his view of the thought form, right? Well, that's what happens with a lot of this ancient alien stuff. Another great example is, those figurines they always show up that have like the reptilian sort of heads, and they're like,
oh yeah,
these are images of the Anunnaki, right?
Yeah.
Here's the problem: there's no reason to think those are Anunnaki at all, in any way. But they'll tell you that they're figurines of the Anunnaki. How do they know? The sites at which those things were found, those are known. They're known statues. They're not unknown. It's a prehistoric site in Persia. We know where they came from. We just don't, but it predates any written record on the area that they were found at. We have no idea what those things are supposed to represent. They could be action figures for all we know. Because yes, people had toys, and they did make figurines for their children to play with. I'm not saying that's what they were. I'm just saying that's as valid an interpretation of what those statuaries are than them being the Anunnaki.
Right.
Right. And that's the problem, is that there are so many things running around out there where it is either a half truth or a hidden truth, or that it's extracted from other conversations and just presented to you as evidence. Right. Another great example of this is honestly their reliance on Zecharia Sitchin's work, right? There's no evidence that he spoke, or that he could, forget speaking, that he could translate Sumerian texts at all. There's no evidence. He had no formal training in it. Now, does that mean that he didn't translate them? Well, hold on. Let's assume that he could, right? Let's present that he's one of these, he was some sort of brilliant polyglot. He learned to translate cuneiform on his own. Fine. I'm willing to believe that. People do amazing things all the time. Here's the problem. When you translate a document, you have to say, this is the document I'm translating. Sitchin never wrote which documents he translated. When people say, oh, he translated the Sumerian epics. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. Every text from any ancient world is named and numbered, right? Because, by the way, like people talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh, there's like a dozen Epic of Gilgameshes out there, right? From different times, different cultures, different concepts. All of these documents are named and numbered, and they have differences between them. There's no document that has ever been found in which the Anunnaki and Nibiru occur in the same document. You can check this. Like, it's all public knowledge, right? There's literally no evidence that he translated anything. He never said what document he supposedly translated. If I were to be remarkably generous, and this is, I mean, honestly, the grace and the generosity I'm giving here is to a level of naivete, but I'm going to do it. The most generous answer you can give for Sitchin's work is that he took other translated documents, and what he did was he looked at them all and he reinterprets the story that they were telling. He takes different documents, different concepts, and he tells his own story based off of this. There's precedent from the 18th century of people doing this. By the way, if y'all just in life, anyone who bases their work off of 18th century material you need to question all of it. There is good material that comes out of the 18th century, but a lot of it's complete and utter bullcrap. They were just making, a lot of academics back then, by the way, it's happening today too, was just making stuff up. But there are translations of like one of the versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh where you look and you're like, this isn't at all what's being said. They're reinterpreting the story and they're putting their own stuff into it. To be remarkably generous, to say that perhaps he wasn't just a full-on, that Sitchin wasn't just a full-on fraudster, right? That he was just trying to con people out of money, that he really believed what he was doing. The most generous interpretation is he took the stories that he was seeing, and then he takes the story from the Bible, from Genesis, and says, how do I interpret this into my ancient astronaut worldview and create this and extract the narrative out of all of these different documents? That is the most generous interpretation you could give of what he did. But none of Sitchin's work is a translation of any ancient Sumerian text. No cuneiform text was translated by him at all. That's not even a question. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Now, whether or not he could is irrelevant to me. Did he do it? Right? The answer is no. None of these documents match up to anything that he wrote. Again, trying to be really generous to Sitchin to a point that really bends credulity. What he probably did was just look at these different stories that had already been translated. He looks at the Bible and he says, how do I, and he tries to, in his mind, see the real story. And he sees that as translation. That has precedent in the past of academics in the 18th century doing very similar things with other documents. So again, being as generous as I can, that's probably what he was doing. But the simple fact of the matter still goes back to ancient astronaut theoreticians will tell you that Sitchin translated these ancient Sumerian texts. They'll never tell you which texts because he never said it, because there's no document that comes anywhere close to resembling what he wrote down. And there's Heiser and plenty of others have gone through and shown that there were other documents that we know he did translate. Like I'm not saying he didn't speak other languages. He did translate other languages and other documents. When he actually said, hey, I translated this document, and they can show errors in his translation. This is the thing. There is good work done out there. Sitchin ain't doing it. But they never give you that information. They never tell you, hey, here's some problems with Sitchin's work. Here's some biases in his translations or in his work. By the way, he didn't translate anything. There is no instance where the Annunaki and Nibiru, even the idea of Nibiru being a planet, it's not what the word means. It means place of transition, right? Sitchin also is the one who really, really popularized. Now, he didn't create the idea, but he popularized the idea of Nephilim meaning fallen ones. Nephilim does not mean fallen ones. It absolutely means giants. Michael Heiser's work on this is very, very clear. Nephilim is the pluralized version of a Ugaritic word that means giant, right? But it's pluralized. The thing is, if it was to mean the fallen ones, it would be translated or pluralized to something more like Nephalim, not Nephilim. There is a word from Ugaritic that if you were to pluralize it to mean like a group, would translate as Nephilim, and that word literally means giant. That's not in dispute. He popularized this idea because, again, his work is sloppy at best to straight out deceptive at worst.
But what about Georgio?
Georgio, I think I always try to offer grace and just assume. I like to work from this unless I'm given reason to believe otherwise, that everyone's telling you what they believe, right?
Okay.
I think Georgio is a true believer. I really do. I really, really do. Right? In the same way, like Zechariah Sitchin, I think he's a true believer. I think I've never questioned Sitchin's legitimacy in his questioning, right?
Or sincerity.
Or his sincerity. Yeah. I've never questioned their sincerity. But sincerity doesn't mean correct. And it doesn't mean that they're doing the work right. One of the things that really should have, that I actually personally, and again, not that I had anything to do with it, but that for for Von Daniken, that always hurts is when I hear him tell this story of when he was in school, right? Because he was in a Catholic boarding school in Sweden or Switzerland, one of the two. And he was reading through God's visitation at Sinai, right? And it's describing God coming down, talks about the lightning, the thunder, the fire, the flame, and the smoke. And he said, this sounds so much like a Titan rocket, right? Like because it's the rockets that were being used to go into space at that time. And the problem is, it should have been a really easy conversation for that priest that he was talking to answer. Because there's an obvious point that they always omit in this story to make, because they'll say, see, this is evidence that a rocket came down because it sounds like a rocket. Okay, let's give you that this sounds like a rocket to our ears, because we would describe a large, heavy platform rocket sounding like this, right? Groovy. I'm here for it. Here's the problem. Moses goes up that mountain. While all that's happening, he's up there for 40 days. Now, can 40 mean not necessarily a literal number, but is more of a metaphorical number? Yeah, that's absolutely true. I do think it's actually meaning 40, but here's the problem. 40 can mean way more than 40, right? Alibaba and his 40 thieves, right? If you actually count the number of thieves in the story, it's like 118. Yes, 40 doesn't necessarily have to mean exactly 40. The problem is it ain't meaning 3. It is meaning a very large number. So here's the problem. He goes up while the thunder, the lightning, the fire, and the smoke is all there. If he did that, and this was a rocket that is being described, he should have been blown down the mountain doing a really bad impersonation of the Human Torch. And here's the problem. It's going on for 40 days. Let's assume it's not a literal 40. Well, now we know it could mean half a friggin' year, or it could mean 2 or 3 weeks. You're telling me that this spacecraft, right, is hovering using chemical propulsion, because that's what that's his point, right? This sounds like chemical propulsion. This isn't some Star Trek level anti-gravity technology. It's hovering using chemical propulsion, and that it's hovering using chemical propulsion for 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, 118 days. Same way Alibaba had those thieves. Hovering is literally one of the most fuel expensive things you can do in the air, because it's doing all of the work. And of course, they'll kick in with, well, no. It's super special secret technology. Okay, but here's the problem. Your argument is that this is a chemical rocket like we would use. That's your argument. You can't have it both ways. You can't say it's some sort of super secret special technology, but it also sounds like a rocket we would use. You can't use both of it. And again, they omit, again, like in Ezekiel, they omit 60%, 80% of the description. They're omitting these elements because they want to create an argument and an illusion for an argument, when their entire argument boils down to, we think that that aliens have created humans and that all of these supernatural things of the past are all extraterrestrials, and so we're going to interpret it that way.
Yeah.
They're hiding the argument. The argument isn't we have evidence that they're aliens. Their argument is we think they're aliens, therefore they must be aliens. That's it.
So, I was just going to just announce, because of what you brought up, to your point, people associating things with aliens. I'd like to announce that I'm going to take my show in a direction, okay, where I'm going to reveal the truth about the Anunnaki and about the Galactic Federation. Which races are which? Who's who? How does Zeta Reticulans fit into this whole dynamic? What are their galactic political associations and affiliations with the Arcturians? And we're going to go into the Council of Nine, the Nine Supreme Masters.
The Nines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like the Illuminati in Marvel.
Yeah.
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 And the
I appreciate you taking that stance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, Uncut Savage asked about the Foo Fighters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not the band, by the way. The thing that everyone seems to forget about the Foo Fighters is they're also associated with gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
Like my favorite story is my father's favorite story too. Is while seeing these Foo Fighters, right, these balls of light move around a plane, right? It was on one of the, I can't remember which bomber it was. It was on one of the long range bombers, probably really bad with the planes. Anyway, but he was one of the long range bombers, and I think it was one of the gunners, like they were just out. He was using the restroom. They have, the long range bombers have on board restrooms. He's using it, and while these Foo Fighters are going around, he describes it full on like a gremlin comes into the plane, pulls him off the toilet,
mm-hmm.
and jumps out, and that's it. That's the entire story. And then the Foo Fighters leave, right? It's all, there's, again, it is the presence of a truth, but the omission of everything else around it, right? One of my big complaints with the Bigfoot community has been the deliberate scrubbing of high strangeness with a lot of sightings.
Yeah.
For decades.
You're talking about the flesh and blood folks.
Right. John Green did this. Like or was it Peter? I always forget the names. I'm terrible with names, so I write everything down. This has been a long-standing thing where elements of high strangeness were scrubbed from a lot of these accounts because the working assumption was that people were just hallucinating, or they saw something that they didn't understand and their mind was playing tricks on them. So we're going to omit this stuff we don't know what to do with, right? Well, then you're not really taking the account. That's the point. That's one of the arguments that I've had. Is that there was a basic assumption that these things were Bigfoot and not something else. We see the same thing with a lot of American Indian mythologies and religious beliefs, right? Where we take a wild man story, right? The wild man motif is pretty much cultural universal. But then what modern Bigfooters have done is they said, well, all of these wild man mythologies must then therefore be examples of Bigfoot. And they use that as evidence for their thoughts and beliefs, but they remove the actual American Indian beliefs and theories around these things, their cultural connections. Again, Joshua Cutchin famously talked about how there's a tribe in Alaska that has this very, very firm belief that you don't ever eat anything that they give you, because if you do, they'll take you into their world and you'll never leave. That's straight up fairy lore. And there's other instances of this. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm here to say the Caddo have a belief about what they called the Stick Indians, right? And they just believe that they were another tribe of people, but that they were uniquely different. And their stories and their lore matches that understanding. They don't ascribe any supernatural elements to them. But we have all these other wild men mythologies where it's clear these are supernatural entities that are being described. And yet, instead of Bigfooters say, okay, well, hold on, maybe we should respect these traditions and these beliefs and include that in our data, they remove those elements and just say, this is evidence of Bigfoot, right? Like I said, like, this is why I never use the name Thunderbird in association with living pterosaurs. That is me putting my thought on ancient beliefs and not respecting what they were doing. And in order to really have this thought that living pterosaurs are thunderbirds, I have to omit what these cultures believed about the thunderbird. So much of what Ancient Aliens does is something that I really despise. It is taking points of interest out of context, omitting other information associated with it, and creating and crafting a narrative with it to give and present to the average person who doesn't know any of this other material, who's never engaged with these other cultures or concepts, because why would they? It is deliberately deceptive. Even if they are a true believer and they sincerely believe what they are saying is true, doesn't mean they're not being deceptive about how they're presenting the information. So there you go.
Now I want to address something someone said earlier. John Temprine. He said, "I believe most aliens are evil." Man, John, don't be racist, dude.
Well, they're probably. Well, hey, you know what? You know what they do to? You know what they're doing to cows. You never know what they're doing to the cats and dogs.
Okay, that being said, I do know for a fact that there are some aliens who are definitely up to no good. There are some aliens who definitely do not have our interests in mind. And yeah, there are those that would be considered dangerous. However, there are some good ones as well, like the Arcturians. They're kind of like they're kind of like the galactic like peacekeepers. You know, they kind of work behind the scenes to keep us from being overrun, especially by like the Zeta Reticulans, because they're kind of gunning for our resources.
Okay, I got to throw this out here. I know. Okay, I won't blow your bit.
Not a bit, but I'm just explaining like the Arcturian lore.
Yeah. Well, I know you want to bring up. You need again. You should have a whole multiple episodes dedicated to the book that presents the truth. Yeah. But this is the one question I keep asking, and everyone's like, "Nah." If these aliens were half as powerful as they claim to be, and by the way, as we claim that they are, why do we? And if they have half the abilities that they've been described, why haven't they just straight taken us over? It's not like they haven't had plenty of opportunities. But two, why do we even know they exist? These are things that can come and go as they want. They can move through walls. They can sap our memories. Why do we even know they exist? Right? And let me state at the beginning, I have no problem with the idea that there's other life forms, intelligent, sentient life forms in the universe. That doesn't bother me in the least. God can do whatever he wants, right? Again, that cross is there for a reason. I think God can do whatever he wants. If he wants to create other imagers of himself on other worlds, that's his prerogative, right? However, I would simply just ask, I would suggest that doesn't mean that those things are coming here and interacting with us. Considering how often these things seem to change their shape and their form and their motivation and even how they appear on Earth, Heiser very famous, and it killed me that I hadn't thought of it myself. He points out, and again, when I was doing a show with Dean, we talked about the little, the good neighbors of Irish lore, right? The Fae. Every element of Fae lore lines up 100% with modern UFO abductions and interactions, right? Except Fae and elf lore has zero accounts of craft coming from the sky to abduct people. Fae take you underground into the fairy world, right? Or the elf world, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's all the same thing, but it's underground. There is no craft.
Yeah.
They live in and around your home. That was the point, is they were out there, but they were close by. And yet, 100% of modern UFO abductions, with that one exception, is a one-to-one parallel to ancient fairy lore. I would simply suggest that we are dealing with, again, the truly exotic stuff. I think a lot more of modern UFO encounters and cultures, even abduction, is probably more government driven than we would like to admit. And and probably a lot of it's even just straight up psyops and manipulation. But the truly exotic aspect of all of this has clearly been interacting with us for thousands of years. And it changes its shape and its intention to mold the culture in which it is interacting with us.
Mm-hmm.
That's far more, I think it's an easier explanation is that this is, again, something ultra-terrestrial, spiritual. I've got no problem calling them spiritual because I think they're probably demons. Again, we've had this conversation. It's sort of an overused word because it doesn't really mean what we think it means, but supernatural beings that are not on the side of God interacting with us and doing the things they've been doing for thousands of years, that these are not extraterrestrial creatures coming to Earth to interact with us. And by the way, it does look like the government knows that and has known it since 1947 because that one FBI document everyone likes to show, right? It even says that these exotic craft, like the UFOs, are coming from another plane of existence, and that the information in that FBI document was obtained through spiritual means. It is very common, and by the way, is still used today, but for Ouija boards to be used to communicate with the Space Brothers. We have people who are mediums for aliens and extraterrestrial.
Channelers, like channelers.
Channelers. It's literally the same thing. It's the same. It is all one-to-one. Again, what is his name?
I mean, all the information I got was from channelings. I've read some of those books where they lay out the whole shebang.
Yep. I forgot his name. The protocols, right? We're up to number 6 now.
I forgot his name.
Stephen Greer, right? And where it's like, well, in this, we have full on channeling now as his 6th, but like the 5th one, it's like he will take people out into the desert to stand in a circle and they'll fire lasers and they'll chant and they'll meditate. I'm like, that's an occult ritual. That's not even, it's not even trying to pretend to not be an occult ritual, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's the difference between standing and chanting with candles? It is very clearly that this is a spiritual event that people are interacting with. These things have, and every time people channel or talk to these things, they try to take credit for our creation. They try to say that Jesus is one of them. This is very clearly a supernatural event that is trying to take credit for things that they've never done. They have a very distinct agenda. And at the very least, it's designed to create confusion. At the worst, it's designed to create deception. And again, while I think that Von Daniken and Georgio Tsoukalos are sincere in their beliefs, I think they are sincerely wrong. In that they have perhaps even deceived themselves with their own evidence, because it's not evidence at all. It's simply sleight of hand because they want to prove their worldview to a world that the things they're trying to prove want them to prove this so they can consume us, mind, body, and spirit.
Or maybe they want to believe so bad that they live in like a Star Trek type universe with all these aliens and alliances and federations and.
Oh, absolutely. They want to believe it, but the things behind the belief want us. They want our worship. They want our souls. They want our minds. And I think many of them actually do. Again, I will suggest humans go missing all the time. I would not be surprised if there's some actual consumption going on of the body as well. But definitely the hearts and minds are the primary concern.
But don't worry, guys, because the Arcturians are out there and they're protecting us. They have like battle armor and stuff.
Oh, okay. Like Iron Man armor, or is it like more like
it's like a spiritually based. I heard about it in one of the channelings.
Oh, okay.
They're out there. They're keeping everything at bay,
Gotcha. Because they got nothing better to do with their lives.
Yeah, Nephilim, they do not like them Arcturians, man. They're like kind of like homies with like angels and stuff. They'll like do, they'll be like, "Hey, what's up, dude?
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
What's up, guy? How's it going?" But they're like
Dude.
blue.
Oh, see, you can't trust blue people. That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
I'm just trying to get up on that Arcturian battle armor, dude.
I'd be okay with it, but again, here's the thing, man. Smurfs are a problem. Gargamel knew. He knew.
Oh, by the way, I think I may have accidentally proven the Anunnaki narrative, right? Well, not proven, but I found something in mainstream science where I was like, that actually does support the Anunnaki narrative. And that is why they're so obsessed with coming here for gold.
Okay.
I figured it out by accident.
Are they Ferengi?
Well, I think it was a random Neil deGrasse Tyson video. I don't know. You know, I watch a lot of space videos and documentaries. This is one of my favorite things, right?
Yep.
One of the recent, I guess, theories, I wouldn't even say it's a discovery because it's more conjecture than anything, but they now believe that the amount of gold that exists on this planet is not common in this galaxy. And one of the recent quote unquote discoveries, at first people would teach that all of the heavier metals would be produced through the process of a supernova, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Star, it through fusion goes up through the table of elements until it hits iron. Everything kind of goes to shit after that, explodes. In the explosion, all the heavier elements, like the heavier metals, get produced and get dispersed. Now they realize in that standard model, the amount of gold that would be present on this planet would not make sense. The only way they believe now that you could get that levels of gold to be naturally occurring on a planet would be is if where we were in the galaxy was the site of a kilonova.
Oh, wow.
Kilonovas are exceedingly rare because kilonovas are basically when two neutron stars collide. So they do happen.
Is that more or less powerful than a bossa nova?
Damn it, Jason. How dare you undermine my point, sir? How dare you?
Hold
See,
on.
this
Didn't
is
we
the kind
just
of
find
abuse.
an asteroid that was
This is the
so
kind of
full
abuse
gold?
that Georgio would be getting had he shown up tonight. I'm glad I saved him from that maltreatment.
So bad. But didn't we just find a giant asteroid that has like $64 trillion worth of gold in it?
Yeah, like in this solar system.
Yeah. So we're special.
Yeah,
so
this solar system I'm
we're
talking about.
really special. Stupidly special.
So
special everyone has to come here.
Because it's not every day like two neutron stars specifically are crashing into each other.
Yep.
So then they believe that, okay, so it would make more sense. This is my thinking now. If I were an alien on the other side of the galaxy, I'd be looking at this solar system being like, well, that's where all the gold is. That's where the kilonova happened.
Yeah. And as we all know, the Anunnaki are actually Ferengi, and they love themselves some gold. And before anyone points out, no, the Ferengi use gold-plated latinum. That's DS9, baby. Go back to watch TNG. They're only using gold.
How apropos, because before I end the show, hold on.
Donnie Cho, meme of the week.
Okay. I prepared a special meme today. You never seen that?
I was not prepared for that.
You've never seen that?
No, I've seen that. I was not prepared for you to play that.
Oh. Okay, ready? I prepared a special meme for tonight. Ready?
Okay,
here we go.
I'm ready.
Excuse me, Commander Riker, but my eyes are down here.
Okay.
Look at wait, no.
I had no idea you were going to pull that, but I love it. I love it so much. DS9 is actually my favorite Star Trek series. So
yeah, it's mine. It's definitely mine.
Yeah. So the fact that you're using Garrick is, and of course, that's one of the only. Well, I guess technically Picard did too. Like there was only really 3 characters that jumped from the crew that jumped from Star Trek TNG to DS9. Although again, Picard had one introductory scene, but Riker's the only one who actually guest starred on.
Yeah.
Although technically the guest star wasn't really.
Yo, wasn't
Riker.
he hooking up with that Bajoran chick for a while?
Yeah, well, no, it was one episode, and it was actually Thomas Riker.
Yeah.
The clone, the transporter clone of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, for the people listening at home who cannot see the image I've produced, it is a picture of Commander Riker looking very longingly in Garrick's forehead vagina. And look at his face. Look at Commander Riker's face, like looking at him all like longingly. And then Garrick is like looking all coy and he's being like, my eyes are down here. So, yep. By the way, I cannot take credit for making that meme. I did not make that meme. I just found it, but it made me laugh when I saw it.
Yes, that's brilliant. All right, we need to end on that because we can't beat that. We can't beat that.
All right, folks. So tune in. Keep watching. Pretty soon, I'm going to reveal the actual truth of these extraterrestrial species. And you will know for sure. Peace.